Welcome back to Let's Play Higurashi Himatsubushi. It's the 24th of December, so it's Christmas Eve, and this will be uploaded tomorrow, probably, so Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and all that bollocks. It's the morning, and I'm not sure how much sleep I got. It's just like, I fell asleep in the evening, I think, and I woke up in the night, and then I fell asleep in the night, and then I had like maybe 2 hours sleep, I don't know. So I'm just kind of like, ugh. I'm looking outside, it's raining, it's just like, yeah, does that make you feel like, oh, it's Christmas? No, that makes you feel like, a rainy day. And it's a morning as well, so that's double kind of, I'm not a morning person, but here I am anyway. Yeah, we held a memorial service a few days ago. I've become estranged with my father-in-law lately, so it was rough getting everything ready. Wait, what? Oh yeah, that is Akasaka. Ow. Oh yeah, it hasn't really been like... Now that I think about it, that was like... They just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of... just skipped over stuff, didn't they? Right towards the end of the arc. It's like, okay, he's gonna return to Tokyo, and then it's just like cuts to like freaking, what, 7 years later. That must have been a lot of work. It was then that the hostess brought in the extra, pardon me, drinks that we had ordered before. While the bottles of beer clanked as she brought them in, we halted our conversation so that we could go over the word of the day. What would be a fitting word for Christmas? I mean, Christmas in Japanese is pretty much the same. I mean, it's a non-Japanese word, that clearly, isn't it? So it'd just be like Christmas is pretty much the same. Just have a bit of an accent to it and be written out a bit differently, obviously. How about, I don't know. Actually, let's see if we can find holiday. That could count. As the crickets chirp, I will find this word. There it is. British English vacation, Roko. Roko. I'm not sure how that pronunciation would go because it's got the character for re, but it's got a small yo, so that makes it ro. And then it's got ko, and then it's got oo. But that's the word for the day, nonetheless. What Ooishi meant when he said it must have been tough. Thinking about that was still hard, but time had healed the wound. Can you guess what it is? It was the day after, when I found Ooishi to apologize. When I did, Ooishi almost immediately handed the phone to one of my colleagues who happened to be there. Not only was I injured in a brawl with the suspects, but I disappeared to drink late into the night without leaving any sort of contact information. So I thought he'd definitely be mad. However, all he said was that it was something he couldn't talk about over the phone and that I should come to the station as soon as possible. At the time, I could only think that he must have been really pissed off. But when I arrived at the station, he said this. It seems your wife was involved in an accident. Yep. Having no idea what happened, I borrowed the phone to contact the hospital Yukie was staying at. After being given the round several times, I was finally able to talk to someone in charge, and after mincing words for quite some time, they told me Yukie Akasaka was killed in an accident. The world became a blur as I sat there dumbfounded. Yukie's death was unbelievably abrupt, unbelievably sudden. Well, if you remember that one tip, that was least around Yukie in the hospital, and she was like, "Oh, I want to listen to Higurashi." That's obviously when that accident happened. I could have understood if there was some kind of problem during the birth, but Yukie's death wasn't anything like that. On the stairs on the way up to the roof, she just happened to slip and fall. And she just happened to fall on an unfortunate place at an unfortunate angle. That was it. When to blame Yukie's death on somebody, I began to think that it was an act of revenge by the Defense Alliance, that they killed my wife and made it look like an accident. What I learned when I flew back to Tokyo, however, was much more cruel than that. Yukie had a habit of going up to the roof to cool off in the evening. There was an elevator up to the 7th floor, but from there you had to take the stairs to get to the roof. Even late in her pregnancy, when the evening came, she would always head up there. Her father had always said for her not to push herself, but Yukie insisted that until the time she had no choice but to stay in bed, she should be allowed to do as she wished. However, I had never once seen Yukie go up to the roof. I only heard that from her father and the nurses. That was because whenever I visited her, she would spend that time with me instead. So yeah, you're gonna have that regret as well. It's like if he had been there, it might not have happened. So that's gonna like rack on his nerves there. I heard the reason why Yukie went up to the roof from a nurse she had become friendly with. She had said that her husband was away on business a lot of the time, and that whenever he called, she was able to cheer him up and give him courage. But when he didn't call, she couldn't do that. Her husband might put on a show of bravado, but in reality, he grew lonesome pathetically easily. Well, fast. She was probably just the same. Whenever he left for business, not clear when he'd be back, she felt very lonely. Whenever she cheered him up, she was actually cheering herself up as well. That's why, whenever he went far away for an important job, on the evenings he didn't call. At the very least, she felt that standing underneath the same sky, her feelings would reach him. At that moment, I remembered the words that girl had told me, that it was best that I go back to Tokyo right away. Otherwise there would be something I'd regret horribly. It's all coming together now, isn't it? Yes, that's it. Because I was away on business that day, Yukie had headed up to the roof. Had I known that this would have been the result, had I done as the girl had said and dropped everything to head back to Tokyo, I might have been with Yukie on the day she died. If it was with her, she wouldn't have gone up to the roof. The day my wife died was on the evening of the 3rd day of my trip. Yes, it was right before the time I had the sudden urge to hear Yukie's voice and ran around the village trying to find a phone. The girl had gone around and cut all the phone cords. If she hadn't, and I had made that call, I would have undoubtedly learned of Yukie's death at that time and collapsed in tears. Of course, even though the cords were cut, it had only put me off learning of Yukie's death by that one evening. In the end, I had learned of it in the next morning. However, when I managed to put my emotions in order, I realized it was that girl's small token of consideration. That's the first time I've heard about that. Yeah, it's the first time I've talked about it. Could it have been a coincidence? She doesn't have any special powers or anything. Aren't you the one who told me, Ooishi-san, that she might be the reincarnation of the god called Ooishi-sama? Well, yeah, the old folks in the village believed that Rika had divine powers. Divine powers? She had originally said it as a kind of joke, but realizing that I was serious, he slumped his shoulders. I don't know if it's true or not. Truth or not. What? They said she did things like prophesize the future or talk about things she should not have no way of knowing. That she was clairvoyant, that it was divine revelation. Well, all sorts of things. Of course, they couldn't give specific examples. She prophesied Yukie's accident. She tried to laugh it off, but out of respect to my deceased wife, he kept it restrained. Does that mean an active and capable investigator from Metropolitan Police Department believes in divine powers and curses? Having him say that so bluntly, I couldn't respond. Of course, I had no intention of believing such odd things. But he could only say that because he didn't know what I did. Since I met that other girl who both was and wasn't Rika, I couldn't deny the existence of any otherworldly entity. Of course, I can't deny that it might not have been Sounds but rather a warning. Not but a warning. If what that girl had said was a warning about Yukie's accident, then things became much easier to understand. Basically, the line of thinking became that it was a threat, because I didn't go back to Tokyo. My wife was killed in a way that made it look like an accident. Not satisfied with an investigation into your wife's accident? Of course, I suspected foul play. I pored over the results and even carried out my own personal investigation. There weren't any witnesses to Yukie's fall. There was the possibility that somebody had hidden, waiting to push Yukie down the stairs. However, the cleaning ladies frequented the roof to hang laundry. The security cameras on each floor hadn't recorded anything out of the ordinary. There wasn't anything set up on the stairs, and I was unable to find anything suspicious. In the end, even after my personal investigation, I can't think that anything else happened other than a simple accident. Well, of course, these were the guys that took the minister's grandson hostage. It wouldn't be impossible for him to push a lone pregnant woman down the stairs without leaving any evidence. Ooishi's expression had completely sobered up. They murdered your wife. When Yukie died, I thought that as well. More precisely, I wanted to blame somebody, so I created the most viable scapegoat. But without any clear evidence, that violent notion faded along with the wounds in my heart. Did that girl know beforehand about my wife's death and was threatening me? Or did she prophesy that death and was offering me a road to salvation? If I had to choose between the two, I would tend towards the latter. Ooishi smiled slightly in disbelief as he poured more beer from his bottle. Then if I may, if what you say is true, then Rika was a prophet who knew the future. If so, why didn't she predict that disaster? If she knew that the gas eruption was going to happen, why did she remain silent? Even a few hours beforehand would have been enough. The villagers knew that most of the people would have escaped without dying. Yep. If you saw the previous arc, this might sound a bit familiar. Great Hinamizawa in Memoriam List. It's the same music that happened during that scene last time. It was near the end of June 1983. This is really somber music, isn't it? Which makes sense. Perfect for a scene like this, really, isn't it? Volcanic gases from the Onigafuji swamp erupted and hit the village in the middle of the night. It was an unprecedented disaster where the whole populace was wiped out. It caused a wave of panic about volcanic gas across the country, causing people to overreact over any reports of hot smells. I hadn't heard of the blockade on the Hinamizawa area being lifted, so it should still be cordoned off. It's my turn to be lost for a response. Well, she did say, though, didn't she, she did prophesize all the deaths and stuff, but she didn't prophesize that. Well, if Rika Furude, the reincarnation of Ooishi, was killed when the village might have, then the village might have incurred the god's wrath, making him call forth the miasma from the swamp to kill everyone. That explanation is what the survivors are whispering about. I thought there were no survivors, though. Or maybe, I have no idea. Maybe, I just don't know. Sorry, Ooishi-san, did you just say she was killed? Yeah. Well, I don't think it would be a problem if I told you. When I saw the news about the gas disaster, I remembered that girl. I then found her name in the list of victims. That's why at the time I thought her own death she had predicted was due to the gas. It was after that I learned from the tabloids of the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa during the 5 years leading up to the disaster that became known as the Curse of Ooishi-sama. And that string of mysterious deaths lined up exactly with what the girl had predicted, so I'd always thought to ask Ooishi about it, as he had been involved in the investigation. That's right, that was the reason for our reunion. But right now, Ooishi had said, Rika Furude didn't die in the disaster, but was killed? Can I ask you about the last year of the curse? I may be retired, but I still have to keep things confidential, you know. Excuse me, madam, do you have anything cold that's brewed locally high grade? If there is, I'll leave the selection to you. Oh my, I didn't mean it that way. Ooishi laughed loudly, not wholly unsatisfied, and stopped the hostess to tell her that the cheap booze was fine. What? I know as much was written in those magazines, but I don't know anything about the curse that happened the year of disaster. Wait, no, that's probably Akasaka, isn't it? I know as much as what's written in those magazines, but I don't know anything about the curse that happened the year of the disaster. Because the entire area around Hinamizawa was sealed off, you see. There wasn't much of an investigation that could be done on the last year of the curse. Even if after several years the quarantine is lifted, the villagers are mostly dead, and what few survivors there were probably went to stay with relatives, their whereabouts mostly unknown. It's a complete dead end, which he seemed to postulate to himself as he stared at the ceiling, as if trying to work out a memory from the rusty cogs in his head. And then he said in a completely sober voice, "The magazines made it seem like the curse of the 5th year was that disaster. The actual curse really happened on the day of the Watanagashi festival. A photographer by the name of Jiro Tomitake. He was the victim." She gestured about how the victim tore his own throat with his fingernails as he talked. "And the burnt corpse of the woman Tomitake was in a relationship with was found in the mountains in Gifu. Gifu Prefectural Police weren't very cooperative, so I don't know much about it, though." There were 2 victims in one night? Actually, see, it wasn't just those 2. You see, the next day, Kamagi-kun, one of my subordinates, disappeared along with his car in the middle of his investigation. Kumagai was a younger detective that was going to be partnered with Ooishi after we first met. I think he actually has a portrait, but he doesn't have a portrait in the original ones, I don't think. But he's always kind of, well, it's obvious, he's always with Ooishi because he's kind of like his sidekick, sort of. He was going around the village to question people about the incident with Tomitake. He might have gotten caught up in something. If he was with me, he might have been safe. Even now, it still stings. That day, for some reason, I did hit a real number on my stomach. I had to pass on going around outside. He got too close to the truth and was made to disappear. That's what I think. Kuba-chan was young and had a promising future ahead of him, but he still didn't have enough experience on the scene. He wasn't used to dealing with any complications. She lamented the fact that he wasn't with his subordinate that day. When you think about it, it's kind of similar to the previous arc, this, isn't it? But at the same time, it's not 100% the same. Notice that? It's all kind of like, there are a lot of similarities, but it doesn't always seem to be the same. It all makes sense eventually, but for now, let's not talk too much about it to avoid spoiling potentially. Because, you know, when I ramble, I end up sometimes spoiling things. And then the next day, see, you know him as well, Akasaka-san. You know, Dr. Yuri. You remember him? That young doctor from the hospital. I vaguely remember. For whatever reason, he committed suicide with sleeping pills. No suicide note or nothing, or anything. The autopsy confirmed that it was the sleeping pills. Nothing was in doubt except for the motive. Isn't that hard to make it look like anybody died from taking sleeping pills, is it? Any possibility it was a murder? He was single, no prior marriages. It didn't seem like he was going out with anybody in particular. He was the coach on a local junior baseball team and was on good terms with the villagers. He was liked by everybody. I couldn't find anybody who would want to do him harm. Well, any chances to investigate were ruined by the disaster, though. There's no way to find out anything about him now. Then, what about Rika Furude's death? It was the day of around noon. Some of the old folks who were visiting the shrine. discovered the corpse of Rika Friday. Murder. Before we continue, we should probably stop eating that squid salmon. Yeah, probably should stop eating. That bad? Ooishi nodded firmly. The corpse was found on the shrine grounds next to the donation box, although she was probably killed somewhere else. That's because while she was completely naked, there wasn't any dirt on the soles of her feet. Any sign it was some sort of sexual assault. According to the autopsy, there wasn't any indication of that. What we know is that she was rendered unconscious by some sort of drug, carried to the place, and then her abdomen sliced wide open. Her organs were deliberately removed and scattered about. Unconscious? Then she wasn't cut open after her death. Ooh. That's horrible. That girl's prediction was right on the mark. And again, doesn't that sound familiar? I'm pretty sure she was more detailed about the other deaths that led up to her home. For example, I think she said that the housewife that was beaten to death on the 4th year had her head split open. Then in that case, did she know that her own death would be so terrible? There must have been some moments where she wanted to doubt the validity of her own predictions. But as people died exactly as prophesied, as the years passed, that prophecy would only come closer to fruition. And then, facing the final year, unable to struggle against her own destiny, her all too young life was snuffed out, and in such a cruel way. Knowing that her days were numbered, and unable to fight in tide of events heralding her end, my heart ached at her helplessness. About the way she died, it seems like it wasn't just somebody's sick tastes. What I'm saying is, I told you before about how Hinamizawa used to be home to demons, didn't I? Yeah, I think I remember. The vessel in Hinamizawa village, Higurashi, the cotton drift, seems to stem from the drifting of entrails. It seems that it came from the man-eating demons ripping apart their victims and throwing their organs into the river. How frickin' morbid! Let's actually have a look how different the characters are. If they've even written it out that way. Higurashi. I cannot see where it is. I don't know the difference. Actually, I've got cotton in here somewhere. In this here dictionary. There it is. Yeah, that's that first character right there. That's Cotton. So, does he use a different character? Because I don't think my dictionary has drift in it, so... Might have a different word in though. Well, different characters, I mean. It sounds like... So maybe use the same character for drift. This isn't gonna be the final part by the looks of it, is it? So drift would be that one. And it's right there. It's using katakana though. Somber sea. You know what I find odd about this is, that's like the character for, I think, is it? No, actually it isn't. What character is that? It hasn't got the alphabet that makes it ooh. Is there another character there? Yeah. Okay, that's War actually. So that is actually correct. That is Watanagashi. So it didn't really show a different character for entrails there. Watanagashi Tsumare. Blah blah blah. Shikara blah. Jita mono rashi in this. And that's like I pointed out before, that's like what usually, so probably nandemo blah 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 e blah ta chiga blah 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 wo parashite maybe blah 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 wo blah ni la deta toyu tokoro kara blah jitara shin this gets on with the plots. Oh wait, that one that had like lines like this, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and those kanji characters, I think that must have been for a river. Because, you know, some kanji characters actually look like the word that they actually are kind of representing, like trees, river and stuff like that. It makes it, the character actually looks like what it's describing sometimes. In other words, in Hinamizawa, pulling out entrails had some sort of religious meaning. You know what? I want to check that as well. I think that might actually be the characters for Hinamizawa, actually. Maybe. Hinamizawa ni oite wa. I have no idea for the rest of that, though. I mean, look at these characters. Like I said before, imagine writing this out. I mean, look at that character right there. How confusing. You'd be like, where do I even start with this? And it kind of looks like some characters. Let's find one, actually. Is there one on here that I can use as an example? Really that I can see. There are some characters that kind of feel like they're more or less like hiragana or katakana characters, just kind of thrown together. It's kind of weird. Well, this is according to the old tales of Hinamizawa, you see. To act as an arbitrator so that the humans and the man-eating demons could live together peacefully, a god known as Ooishi descended from the heavens. If I recall, Rika was said to be the living incarnation of that Ooishi, wasn't she? Yeah, so cutting open Rika, who was a living god, would be to the village nothing less than absolute sacrilege. Absolute sacrilege. In other words, it means sacrilege towards Ooishi. The rest you should know, Akasaka. The wrath of Ooishi would occur that same night. The Great Hinamizawa disaster. The official explanation was that some swamp upstream erupted with toxic volcanic gas which enveloped the village. Let's see what it looks like. It's just like, come on, get on with it. Hinamizawa. It's like no hiragana or anything in between, just kanji characters. I think that's Hinamizawa, but didn't they show 4 characters last time? I'm confused. I might have been looking at the wrong one. It's very confusing. The swamp where it erupted was called Onigafuchi Swamp. Okay, you got me again. You son of a bitch, Ooishi, you son of a bitch. Onigafuchi to Mashite, or whatever way you want to pronounce it as. I'm only assuming this is Onigafuchi here because I think that's the character for Oni. I don't know what this little thing's doing here though. Onigafuchi do not know what these characters mean. It's actually there as well, isn't it? Strange. It was the origin of Hinamizawa's old name, Onigafuchi Village. According to village lore, the depths of the swamp apparently led to hell, where the man-eating demons come from. That almost seems too perfect. Oh, no, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There was another bit of folklore in the village. If Ooishi became angry, the cauldron of hell would open up and miasma would flow out. Or so they say. The village's hell was at the bottom of the swamp. So basically the miasma poured out, smothering the village. Yeah, basically due to the sacrilegious way that Rika, the living incarnation of Ooishi was killed. The village incurred the wrath of Ooishi in the form of that disaster. That seems to be their explanation. So what you're saying is that the disaster wasn't a natural one? Well, everything does seem to fit together a little too well. Ooishi-sama's curse doesn't really exist, and everything really was just a matter of coincidence. I would doubt it. A wry smile formed on Ooishi's face as he listened to my absurd take on things. He wore an expression as though even if it were absurd, there was a time he had thought the same thing as well. In regard to the religious beliefs of the villagers, suppose there was a more fanatical following among them. And that group created a situation that would incur Ooishi-sama's wrath and enacted their zest to make it seem like the truth. I can't tell who's speaking now. Maybe that's, top one is Akasaka. In regards to the religious beliefs of the villagers, suppose there was a more fanatical following among them. And that group created a situation that would incur Ooishi-sama's wrath and enacted a disaster to make it seem like the truth. Of course I won't laugh. I've wandered down the line of reasoning more than once myself. However, even though Hinamizawa is a small village, it still has a population of over 1,000 people. To move that many people in a single night doesn't seem realistic, no matter how you think about it. The gas eruption was believed to have happened around 2 a.m., several hours before dawn. In that short amount of time, going and around killing all the villagers in a way that made it look like poison gas didn't seem feasible at all. The swamp the gas erupted from still has some religious significance, didn't it? Wait, this is probably Akasaka. Swamp the gas erupted from still had some religious significance, didn't it? If that's the case, then maybe there was something set up in the swamp, something that could be activated whenever a divine verdict was rendered. According to the JSTF press release, the swamp was declared the source of the eruption. This was after everything was thoroughly looked over by the investigative team. If anything like that was set up, I think they would have found it. It wouldn't necessarily have to be in the swamp itself. Come on, haven't you heard about it? The old story about how when a faraway spring dried up, the village spring dried up as well. What do you mean by that? Many waterways are connected by underground aquifers. Swamps and springs are only the parts that manage to pop above the surface. So what you're saying is that Onigafuchi Swamp is connected to another swamp or spring, and there's something the villagers rigged up there long ago. Something that changes the pressure of Onigafuchi Swamp, causing it to erupt with poison gas. Is that what you're getting at? Ooishi laughed heartily, commending the fact that the youngins have a nice flexible way of thinking. It was the former detective in him. Even though it was the hypothesis that he didn't come up with, he still had the presence of mind to not dismiss it right away.
That's an interesting theory. If that proves to be true, then it'd be, unprecedentedly, the largest mass murder in the history of Japan.
Once the quarantine on Hinamizawa village is lifted, I think it would definitely should be investigated. Ooishi-san, do you still have any connections with the blah professional police?
Somewhat. I'm an honorary advisor for their judo classes, so even now how I pop up during summer training camps and such.
I don't know when the quarantine on Hinamizawa village will be lifted, but please, let me help investigate.
Got it.
Ooishi-san, how do you feel about the string of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa they call the curse for Yashiro-sama?
At the time, the villagers were putting a lot of pressure on the station. The official stance on things was that the cases were unrelated. That each case was separate, each with its own resolution.
That couldn't be, even though it was blatantly obvious that the cases were connected, based on the village's religious beliefs.
Akasaka-san, we can only say that now because of the rather grandiose ways things ended after 5 years. At the time, those coincidental incidents just happened to coincidentally occur on the day of Otanigashi. Just it would be nice if nothing happened this year kind of feel to it.
Coincidence? The girl predicted everything from the beginning.
Girl?
Rika Furude. That child warned me about all the incidents that would happen afterwards.
Akasaka-san, is that true?
Yes, the girl said as much. That the next year the damn foreman would be killed and his corpse dismembered. Not only that, she warned me of all the events that would transpire in the following years.
Akasaka-san, when she told you all of that, what year was it?
When I met the girl, I was investigating the kidnapping incident, so June of 1978.
The year before this memberment murder.
Uncle was formed between Ooishi's eyebrows as he closed his eyes and began to digest what I had just told him.
Akasaka-san, if you're wrong about Rika Furude knowing the future through some divine medium, this is getting ridiculous.
Yep.
If you're just trying to shock me, I'm going to be really angry, you know.
I'm speaking the truth.
Then the script behind the chain of mysterious deaths was written a year before it even started.
And just as predicted, Rika Furude was killed. At first, I thought she meant that she would be killed in the disaster. However, now I know that her death wasn't due to that, but rather an atrocious one of the hands of a murderer. She said she would be killed. At that point in time, she knew more or less how her own death would occur.
Then why didn't Rika Furude not try and run away? Even if her death was already spelled out for her. Knowing that, she still had a grace period of several years, didn't she? She had plenty of time to try and run away or consult the police. Why did she just accept her death with no resistance?
I don't know.
Even though Rika Furude was daughted upon by the older folks of the village, you see. After she lost her parents, she had no living relatives, and lived a fairly solitary life other than hanging around with some close friends. It might have been she didn't have any power to fight or anybody to rely on.
She must have tried signaling somebody for help in regards to her own death, though.
You know very well that the village and the police weren't very amicable with one another, Akasaka-san. At the very least, I never heard anything about Rika Furude seeking protection from anybody. Or it could be that she simply resigned herself to bring a religious sacrifice. It could have been something like that.
There's no way that was the case. I spoke decisively. That time she said it. She had definitely said that she wanted to live happily, that she wanted to spend her time surrounded by her dear friends. She hadn't given up on life, she had hoped to keep on living. At that moment I became dumbstruck.
What's the matter, Akasaka-san?
No, it's nothing. I fell into silence. Ooishi folded his arms and began murmuring in contemplation again. Eventually he stood up and headed towards the hallway to find the hostess, yelling that he wanted pen and paper. When Ooishi, noisy even though he was just thinking, left, the room immediately fell into a chilled silence. I stood up. It was then I realized that I was drunk enough to be unsteady on my feet. When I slid open the window, a beautiful yet somehow pronounced moon drifted across the night sky. It was just now that I realized she hadn't accepted her own death. She wanted to keep living, happily and joyously. She had said that quite clearly to me. But I was a fool. I hadn't been asked explicitly, so I hadn't realized it. She had made it clear as day that she didn't want to die. Wasn't that her cry for help? She didn't say as much that she wanted help. But even given that, it wasn't as though she wasn't looking for salvation. She had any family and unable to trust the police. She instead told somebody without any relation to the village. Somebody from a faraway place. Me. Yep. Help me. That's probably also why she was so distant from her parents, I suppose. She had gone around and cut the phone cords. If I had made that phone call and learned of Yukie's death, I probably would have fallen into despair. If I was in that state, even if she was looking for help, her cries would have fallen on deaf ears. That's why, knowing everything, she had cut the phone cords. She wanted even a little time to seek help from me. We should just before now had lamented that one of the younger officers got mixed up in a case, having been erased because he wasn't there. I was feeling the same way. If only I was there in June of 1983. I could have protected her. In 1983, it would have been 5 years since the kidnapping took place. While raising the only daughter Yukie had left me, putting all my youth and passion into my work, honing my wits and courage, wrestling with difficult cases. Wait, so did his daughter survive then? Because didn't... I'm confused by that. Nothing like my feelings during the kidnapping incident could have occurred. I wouldn't have been slow to react in a one-on-one fight, and by that point I jumped into foreign mafia-run gambling parlors where I learned to deal with automatic weapons, let alone handguns. I had grown so much that in 1983 I couldn't have been even compared to how I was in 1978. That's why, if I was by her side, I should have been able to save her life. No matter what conspiracy or foul plots drew near, I definitely would have protected her. She even thought that, though sounding resigned, should have still been able to ask me for help. I just didn't realize it. I couldn't realize it. Just as I wouldn't have realized it if I was told of Yukie's accident, I wasn't able to realize it. I wanted to cry. If I had taken her words to heart, I would have prevented Yukie's accident, and I would have been able to protect the girl to whom I owed a debt from even a predetermined death. She must have been expecting that from me. I learned about the disaster while watching television in my house. Until I learned about that, I had forgotten about Hinamizawa. In order to recover from the shock of Yukie's death, I had tried to remove everything about the place from my memory. What an ungrateful fool I was. Even though in exchange for saving her, the girl had told me of a way to save Yukie, I was unable to accept her gratitude, and now, here we were. She hadn't died in her sleep due to a natural disaster. She was split open while still alive, killed while suffering the disgrace of having her organs torn out. She must have known beforehand that on that day, on that year, she would be killed in such a terrifying way. But even knowing what end awaited her, she was all too weak. A lone girl that had anybody to rely upon, unable to seek help, had to swallow her own predetermined death, and left this mortal coil. She said she wanted to live. You know what? This is kind of abrupt, but the charge is really low, and I don't want to call it apart, so I'm going to stop recording now, wait for it to charge a bit, and continue the recording. So I will be right back.
And I am back again, lying down because my legs hurt from sitting over 40 minutes reading this novel. Here it comes, dramatic opera singing. I don't know how I can hit those notes, honestly. It's weird. Anyways, it took quite a while for the battery to charge long enough. Anyway, serious scene here. She said she wanted to live, and this is gonna be a long recording. I'm not gonna record the whole thing, I'm just gonna record till the end of the main plot. We'll do the what was it? The all cast review session will have to wait till after Christmas, I suppose. She said she just wanted to live happily. And I mean, look at this, man. What a joyous video for frickin' Christmas, isn't this? No, that's all she wanted. She didn't ask for anything extravagant. For any person that was ever born, it was the very basest of desires. She never set up people out wanting money or that she wished she was in somebody else's situation. She had said it, that if all deaths were preordained, then hers was probably also all according to plan. She might have been a lone, frail girl, but I didn't think she would have accepted all that, at least putting up a fight. There must have been, in some small way, some form of resistance that she mustered. And with what she could muster, seeking my help was part of that. God damn it! I wonder, he probably said, Kusa! But I gotta check. Like, this is gonna be over 50 minutes long in this video. It's gonna be a pain in the ass freaking uploading it on, Christmas if I do, because, I mean, just like, if it's like at night, then fair enough, but still, the description's gonna be a pain in the ass, and it's be Christmas for crying out loud, man. Okay, he didn't actually say Kuso, he said... Why the little smiley face there? I think that's usually, like, it's kinda, but I'm not sure what it's being used in this context for. So, see this right here? This little thing like here. If you see a bigger version of this, it's 2, like Tsunami, for example. That'd be the character for it. But in this case, it's smaller, which means this right here, Chi. I think the character that comes before it is just drawn out pronunciation. Can't remember if it was that way or if it was the other way around, and it should be Chiku, but I think it's probably Chiku. And then you got that yo again, changing she into sho, and then oh! I howled. I stomped the floor. Why did I become a police officer in the first place? How could I call myself an officer if I couldn't save a single girl from the misfortune that was awaiting her? Was it because there was so much going on that time I couldn't process the fact that she was asking for help? Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that's right, I was still green. If I was in that situation now, I would have definitely been able to help her. But it was already all over. Even if I went to settle the regrets she left behind, Hinamizawa is a dangerous area, was still quarantined. Most of the people involved were already dead, with the few that did remain spread around the country, unable to be traced. The stage of that tragedy was still off limits as well. The police investigation was put on hold, the case slowly being buried in the sands of time. Just like how I wouldn't have known unless Ooishi had asked me about it. Akasaka-san, are you okay? At some point, Ooishi had returned with a notebook in hand. Until I saw the expression on Ooishi's face, I didn't realize that I was in tears. I never realized she wanted help. Akasaka-san, calm down. It's all too late now. She was killed. In such an atrocious manner. She was counting on me, but I couldn't save her. I couldn't save her. I might also be at fault for not building up an amicable relationship with the village. Rika had told me about it, so I might have been able to extend a helping hand. I wasn't able to build up enough trust for that. That's something I regret. When Ooishi said the word trust, it weighed on me even more. Yes, she had given me her trust. She trusted me, meaning that she thought that I would have been able to ward off the fate of her foreseen death. She believed in that. I cried, I fell to my hands and knees as I began to bawl. Eventually, Ooishi spoke quietly. Akasaka-san, does it upset you? It does! Then, there's only one way worth mentioning for Rika to have her revenge. Is there really? Is there a way to do that? She showed me the pen and notebook. In order to properly mourn the death of Rika Frude, we have to at least find out the truth. The truth. Yes, and not just Rika Frude. Lots of people died. Their lament must be immeasurable. But their deaths were left unsettled because of the disaster. Now we can't even investigate them as their memory fades into oblivion. Many people died. The old man was killed, Kuma-chan was erased, everybody was a victim. But the police can't even investigate it. Who's going to take care of their parting regrets? Only we can. Akasaka-san. We find the truth. Yeah, we'll find it. I've been around every one of the string of mysterious deaths and know all the inner workings of the village. You were told an important truth to you before they happened by Rika Frude. We can do it. But they're already dead. That's right. Rika Frude died. You were too inexperienced, so you couldn't save her. It's really hard to voice act, especially lying down. I mean, I never tend to voice act those kind of outbursts, seriously, but whatever. Freaking serious here. She grabbed me, who was a wreck, and lifted me firmly by the labels.
That's why! To atone for that, we reveal the truth. If what you say is true, then all the incidents were part of some greater design. If that's the case, then how we investigate needs to change completely. I intend to spend tonight summarizing all the information you and I have, and then get in contact with one of my former subordinates first thing in the morning. We're not going to let the case go cold. We're definitely going to crack it wide open. Crack it open. Crack it open! We will. Several years have passed, but it's not beyond the statute of limitations. Even if the case has been postponed, it's not closed. It's still going. We're going to keep it going.
Ooishi and I vowed to bring the truth of the case to light and stood up. Everything ended in 1985. I at least wanted to apologize, had searched for her grave. After the state autopsy, her remains were entrusted to one of the shrine's followers. In the future, when the quarantine on the Hinamizawa area was lifted, it would be returned to her family grave. However, unsure who exactly took the remains of Rika Frude, until today I couldn't even apologize to her. In the future, when the quarantine on Hinamizawa is lifted, all I could do then was wait until whoever that person is returned to the grave. What I could do right now was not apologize to her. Instead, until I was able to meet her again, I would reveal the truth and dispel her regrets. Even now, sporadic eruptions of gas in the Hinamizawa area meant that the prospect of the quarantine being lifted wasn't happening anytime soon. Most likely, it seemed that she had no intention of meeting me again until I found the truth. That's why the quarantine wouldn't be lifted, or so I thought, until the day I grasped the truth. It was the following year. Ooishi and I co-authored a book on a string of incidents, mysterious deaths leading up to the Great Hinamizawa disaster. I decided on the title, Higurashi, When They Cry. Of course! It all comes together. Well, obviously not the actual novels. Imagine that, it's like, oh yeah, you wrote Onikakushi Watanagashi and all that. Just like, how the hell would you go about writing that? You didn't even know these people. Well, Ooishi kinda did, but he wasn't there the whole time. It's just like it's a title drop, clearly. That was because for those few days I was in Hinamizawa, the sound I remember the most was the cry of the Higurashi. I could only wish that based on this book, those people involved with that incident could refresh their memories and bring to light a new truth. And more importantly, that nothing like this ever happens again. You know what would be kinda interesting? A documentary style kind of thing. I don't know. I'm gonna sit this time because lying down makes it really hard to voice act properly and read. But imagine if they did like a documentary style, like it's not a real incident, but like kind of doing that kind of way, you know? It'd kind of make it like seem more mysterious. Of course, they haven't got anyone to interview or anything, really, have they? I wrote in this afterward. Why did this tragedy happen? We can't reach the truth by ourselves. If you're reading this, please discover the truth. That is our only wish. Kurodo Ooishi, Mamoru Akasaka. This year, the quarantine on Hinamizawa still hasn't been lifted.
Higurashi,
and they cry.
Why did I do the evil Blackboard voice? That was random.
New scenario has been unlocked. All cast review sessions this week are available to play a little extra on the menu. Then all cast review sessions and pick Himatsubushi.
At least I read it that time before it faded out.
Achievement unlocked. Our only wish.
Wow. What a happy ending. Well, no. Sarcasm. All 4 of these bloody question arcs had tragic endings. I mean, this one kind of ties into one of the other ones, really, ending-wise, isn't it? Sort of, but not completely, not perfectly synced up. It's kind of interesting how it does that. But we'll find out the answers to all that in the answer arcs. We've still got the old cast review session to go. And then, some point in the new year, probably in January, obviously, we'll get on to the answer arcs. And as we can see right here, that's still the only update, and it's for Umineko When They Cry, which is a different series, so it doesn't look like any of the other answer arcs have been released other than the first answer arc, so it's gonna take quite a while until that's probably there. So I guess this isn't completed for Christmas, I guess, because there'll be one more part for the all-cast review session, which is sadly the last all-cast review session, because the answer arcs don't have the all-cast review session, which is a shame completely, because seriously, they are some of the most amusing things about these novels for me. They inspired the After LP talks, goddammit! But anyways, I'll see you next time. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas, whichever one you want the word as. And all that, I'll be having a good day and all that blah blah, even though this will be uploaded in the night on Christmas probably, if I go by my usual upload. Or maybe I'd even upload it in the morning just to get it out of the way with quickly before, Christmas, because it's Christmas! Anyways, well, it's not Christmas today, but it'll be Christmas tomorrow when I upload and blah, whatever. See you next time then, viewers. See you next time.